Hi there, folks. Welcome to another episode of Skateboarding California. This episode is going to be a review of S-One Pro Kneepads, and we're going to compare them to a lot of the other really good kind of top-of-the-line knee pads that are available. Let's take a quick look at the S-One website for their Pro knee pads. This is the latest and greatest. These are the generation 4.5s, and the padding is 40 millimeters thick. So let's see what they have in their marketing materials and their specifications. They do note that the older pads, the Gen 4 foam, was 32 millimeters, so this is a bit of a significant upgrade. And let's see right here. Okay, they're again talking about the thickness of the foam. They're using a nylon outer shell. Pretty much everybody uses nylon, so that doesn't really mean anything. The triple stitch construction at the seams. I don't think anyone else is using triple stitching, so that is a actually significant thing to call out. Articulated butterfly backstraps. Again, everybody uses the backstraps like that, as you can see here. These kind of backstraps are common on all the pads. High abrasion replaceable kneecap. That's kind of interesting. A PC kneecap. That means it's a polycarbonate. So that polycarbonate is actually a lot stronger than ABS plastic, which is commonly used like in helmets. So interesting that they call out that it's polycarbonate. I assume that most knee pads are, but S-One is the only one that's actually telling you that. Perfect length locking top straps. That's another legitimate thing to call out because no other company actually has a buckle that allows you to adjust the length of the top strap. So that's kind of a cool thing about the S-One design. Let's give you a general overview of the S-One pads, because we do videos right here. We don't just shoot with a camera phone in our bedroom with no lights. We actually show you stuff. So right here you can see there's a nice triple stitching that they have on most all the seams, which is really impressive. I don't think anybody else, none of the competition uses triple seams. This right here is a single seam, of course, down that side you can see, and then there's another single seam holding the strap on. But for the most part, a lot of the panels are all triple stitched, which is pretty cool. Now, one of the things I like the least about the S-One pads is this, the bottom strap right here. So this uses a kind of a strap, what do you call it? A strap adjuster. That piece of plastic there, see where you pull out the strap? It uses a strap adjuster instead of Velcro, which all the competition uses, and it's just really difficult to attach those and get those tight. So I'm not really crazy about the bottom strap. By way of comparison, here is a ProTec knee pad, and you can see it uses a Velcro strap with a nice piece of Velcro all the way across, so as the straps kind of get worn out and they start to stretch, you can still tighten them. And then you look right here, there's just this one single loop of plastic, right? And the strap just kind of pulls through that loop, and it's a very, very simple, effective design. Now, ironically, the top strap on the S-One pads is one of the best because it does have a buckle here on the side, which allows you to take up the slack over time. As this elastic stretches and gets worn out, you can tighten it up. So that's pretty cool. Now, the back straps are fairly good because they have this nice edging around them, right? So they've been stitched and they have some good seams. But the problem is this. So when you open it up, you notice that the male and female, the Velcro is the exact same size. Ideally, this piece of Velcro right here, that should go all the way across, okay? Because if it went all the way across, then as the straps get worn out, and as they stretch, you'd still be able to pull them tight. So, it makes it a little bit harder to tighten the straps when they get worn if both sides of the Velcro are the exact same length. So yeah, ideally that should be longer. Now right here is the seam where you can remove the foam padding, and that's where you take the padding out if you want to wash the pads. So that's kind of a general overview of what these pads are like. Another thing to note about the S-One pads is here you can see how the foam, if you look here at the top, you can see the edge of the inner foam, right? And it comes all the way up this way. So that's why these pads, they're not really comfortable, because there's no articulation. So when your leg is inside here, it's got this natural curve to it, and it never straightens out, right? And that's why you get right above your knee, there's a lot of pressure, because this side, is pushing against your leg, and the foam here, it can't bend back, it can't articulate. When a knee pad does articulate, that part of the knee pad is called a lame. Again, we can look at the ProTec pad to see an example of a lame. So right here, you can see how this top piece can move back and forth, right? So as your knee is in here and your thigh is pressed up against that, it can articulate and move with your body. Little history lesson for you. On medieval armor, the kneecap is called the polene, and the articulated parts above and below the knee are called the lame. So that's what that part is called on the knee pad. The tags on the S-One pads are located behind the bottom strap here. So you can see right there, the tag tells you the size, it's extra large, and it also tells you whether it's the right or left pad. Let's put on the S-One pads and see how they fit. So first we undo the top straps, then we undo the back straps. And, I like to put on my pads while I'm standing up. Some people prefer doing it while they're sitting down, but I find it easier to do when I'm standing. So first I put on the top back strap, then I put on the lower back strap. Then I'll swing that top strap all the way around and tighten down that Velcro. And then we do the bottom strap, which, like I said, this is my least favorite of all the pads I've gone over, because it uses a strap adjuster where you have to weave the strap through this little buckle, whereas on all the other pads it's just a loop and Velcro, so it's really easy to just loop it through and then stick down the Velcro. But on this, you got to kind of thread it through and then pull it tight, and there you go. So once the pad is on, let me adjust it here a little bit, but kind of get it positioned more correctly. But once the pad is on, you can see how there is no lame across the top. So when you straighten your leg, the pad isn't moving. It's not articulating with you. And so, it just makes it a little uncomfortable, because you get a pressure point right here on your thigh. And you kind of have one down the bottom too, because there's no articulation. So if your knee is bent a little bit, kind of like this, then the curvature of your leg is conforming to the curvature of the pad. So it's comfortable like this. It's comfortable when your knees are bent. But when your leg is straight, it's really not that great. They're probably the least comfortable of all the pads. So first thing I'm going to do is just kind of cruise around the pool, sort of get a feel for how the pads are when you're just riding on flat ground. I'm not really crazy about these pads. They're probably my least favorite in terms of the pressure points and stuff, because they don't articulate through the padding. You get kind of pressure points on the above your knee and even down on your shin. So it's they're not terrible, but I would say they're maybe the least comfortable. Let's do a quick size comparison between all of these kind of top-of-the-line pads. So the very first ones we'll take a look at on the far left, those are ProTec drop-in pads. Now, they don't make these anymore, but I love these pads. I've literally ridden these for about 7 years, and we're talking like once or twice a week for that long. Now, this little chip that broke off of the kneecap, that happened like a month ago. So they're incredible pads. None of the seams have torn or broken or anything. I mean, they have held up amazingly well. Next, we have ProDesigned. These are actually the ProDesigned pads that are designed for BMX and freestyle, but you can still use them for skating and they still work really well. And then next, we have the newer ProTec pads with the D30 gel in them. Then after that, we have 187s, which are also an extremely popular pad and ridden by a lot of well-known skateboarders. And then finally, we have the pads that we're reviewing. These are the S-One pads. So you can kind of see the size of the kneecaps and things like that compared to all the competing pads. So you get an idea of the size. And remember, all of these pads are extra larges. Well, except ProDesigned, because those are actually a custom pad. They're designed for you when you order them. Now, I actually did speak to someone at S-One who told me that, you know, these pads are designed to fit really well when your knees are bent, which is what's going to be happening when you're on transition. So let's see if that is true. Does it feel better? Turns out that yes, that is indeed accurate, that when you're actually riding the S-One pads on transition, they're pretty comfortable, and those pressure points kind of go away, and they feel really good, and I really like the way they feel when you're actually riding them. The sun is right in my face. I can't see a thing. Yeah, it is true. The pressure points are, you definitely don't feel it as much, because when your knees are bent a little bit, it goes more with the curve of the padding. So yeah, it does feel a little bit better. I like pulling out the tape measure and actually figuring out the thickness of these pads. So the top layer of foam it's about 1 centimeter thick, and when we add that to some of the other layers, well, this one's kind of hard to measure because it's all curved. So, well, I mean, I think if you maybe kind of turn the pad on end here, maybe that's a little easier way to measure it. But you know what? Forget it. You can't really measure these pads. It's too hard because there's too many curves and too many bends, and we'll just trust the advertising and say, okay, the total thickness on these is 40 millimeters, and we'll leave it at that. Now let's compare the padding inside the S-One with some of the competition. So this is the S-One pad, and again, it's advertised as having 4 layers. So you've got this first one, the second one, and then there is this memory foam on the inside. And I believe that the 4th layer, I think that there's something sealed inside of this one, so that's where they get 4 from. So if we compare that to the ProTec, you can see that the ProTec is probably perhaps a little bit thinner than the S-One, but not much. I mean, they are pretty close to one another in thickness. But again, it's not just about the thickness of the pad, it's about the density of the foam, right? So this one's 4 layers, this one's only 2, but this one has the kind of non-Newtonian gel. So would that make this one better than S-One? I don't really know, but at least you get to see the difference. And then let's compare the S-One to the 187, and you can see it is thinner It's the 187s are definitely the thickest pads, but like I said, 187s, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best. It's just depends upon the density of the foam. So we can't compare the S1 padding to ProDesigned because I cannot remove the padding from inside of the ProDesigned, but it's probably about, gosh, I'd say a good 1.5 inches thick, something like that. It's pretty thick. It's probably close to the 2 layers that we see on the ProTecs. So, you know, I think the S1 is a little bit thicker than ProDesigned as well. Okay, so for the next test, we're going to actually do a knee slide. So I'll drop in on the deep, come around, do a backside, and just knee slide down the deep end transition and see how that goes. See how that feels compared to some of the other pads. Let's see what we got. So yeah, these are a little weird when you're standing. They feel pretty good when you're actually riding and your knees are bent. Let's see here. Granted, a controlled knee slide like this isn't the same as a spontaneous one, but it does give you a good idea of how they feel. Yeah, not so bad. They do feel very stable. Gosh, I'm ripping up my shoes more than the pads. They do feel very stable. One of the things that S1 says that in all their layers of padding, they've actually got like a memory foam as the first layer. It's not that thick. It's only maybe 0.5 centimeter. But the idea behind it is that your kneecap kind of sinks into it so that there's no kind of side-to-side lateral movement. You know, it's difficult to tell off of one knee slide, and a planned one at that, but they seem to work pretty good, and they are pretty comfortable, actually, you know, impacting and sliding. So, yeah, not bad for S1. Now let's take a look at the S1 pads and how they held up through that knee slide. And looks like they held up pretty darn good. I don't see really any kind of issues here. A little bit of scuffing on the nylon, but you know, nothing major. The caps themselves both held up pretty good, and you can also see that most of the scuffing is in the center, which is good because, you know, these caps are fairly flat, as you can see from that angle, and that's what you want on your knee pads, because if the cap is too rounded, then, you know, your legs can kind of move all over and get kind of awkward. So if it's flat, they tend to slide a little bit more straight, and these clearly did that. Nothing else really seems to have gotten damaged or messed up in any way, only the caps. So yeah, I'd say they held up pretty good. And the scuffing is not very deep either, so I'm confident that you could do a heck of a lot of knee slides in these before you needed to replace the caps. And if we compare this to my good old ProTec drop-in pads that have been through, you know, probably hundreds of knee slides, you could see that these are still holding up fairly well. And yeah, I think that what these have been through, I think that the S1 pads could probably take that kind of punishment as well. I have to say that my current favorite helmet is actually made by S1. I think their helmets are just really fantastic. They have a lot of really great features, and because of that, I really wanted the S-One knee pads to also be my favorites. I was kind of really rooting for them and wanted to really like these pads. Unfortunately, they do have a few flaws, but I still think they're great pads, and I don't want to give the impression that I'm not recommending them. I still really recommend the S-One pads. I think they're really fantastic. I did a few ratings on them, and numbers from 1 to 4, the higher the number, the better. So, they scored the lowest among the competition in terms of comfort and in terms of that bottom strap. But the top strap is a really cool, smart design. I think the padding is extremely impressive. I love the fact that they've taken the time to do all these different layers of foam, and they seem to have put, a lot of thought and a lot of effort into it. It seems like the quality of what they're putting together is really good with the stitching, and it seems to me like just with a few little tweaks, the S-One pads could be even better than they already are. And like I said, they are really good pads, and I don't want to give the impression that I didn't like them. I really do, because they are definitely worthy of being called among the top pads in the market. Well, thank you very much for checking out this episode of Skateboarding California, this knee pad review, and hopefully you now have a better idea of the options and the brands that are out there and what might work best for you.